Hello everybody, Bradley here, and welcome into a brand new kind of wonder talk with you guys. We've already talked about the Oracle, we've talked about the Kilwa Kisawani, and today I really want to talk to you guys about the brand new wonder that just came out in the latest DLC drop in the New Frontier Pass, the ETEMENANKI, which you can see just wonderfully like glistening and shimmering on our screen right now. The ETEMENANKI is a very interesting wonder that resembles the Petra in a lot of ways. I can't wait to talk about it, and it also synergizes really well with the new wetlands map, which is very interesting because you think of a map with a lot of marshes as being something that's not really ideal, and then you're like, hey mate, wait a second, maybe I could play Vietnam, maybe I can build this ETEMENANKI and make it work. So we were on Twitch today, link in the description, and we found a save that I think works with the ETEMENANKI really well. So let's just chat about it. Before we get started though, of course, just a huge thank you to all of our new subscribers. We are still growing at a blistering pace, and it is amazing to see. Thank you all so much. If you would like to support the channel more directly, we have channel memberships online. That is how we are helping to pay Anvars, our editor, who does such an amazing job with the channel. Is also a mod in our Twitch chat, which is awesome. So if you wanted to join the channel in that way, that is a join button that's just underneath the video or in the description as well. Anyways, the ETEMENANKI, beautifully placed here in the city of Leave ETEMENANKI Alone, is very, very interesting. Like all wonders, we need to start away from the wonder and in the tech tree and talk about where it comes in. The ETEMENANKI comes in the perfect spot. Now, part of doing these tutorials or kind of chats is really difficult because everyone plays Civ in a different way, right? Some people play on Prince, some people play on Deity, most people play somewhere in between that, and the availability of wonders and how good they are and when you can get them and how useful they can be, it varies depending on your difficulty, your Civ, the game you're in, so obviously these don't encompass all games and all difficulties all the time, but the ETEMENANKI comes in early. It does a lot for you if you get the right setup, and you know, writing is a place you want to go anyway. So again, you're not going very far out of your way to get this. In this game, we just rushed straight to writing. It felt great. Even if you don't get the ETEMENANKI, you end up with campuses, which isn't even the worst thing to end up at. On Deity, it's a little dangerous because you might want to rush archery to make sure you're not getting just murdered by the other AI. I will also caveat that the AI seem to really freaking love this thing. So the AI will soak it up. We had to rush for mining here to chop this out. So I will knock a few points off the ETEMENANKI and give you like a little bit of a warning that if you're playing on Deity or a higher difficulty, the AI are going to rush for this thing fairly quickly. But otherwise, it's just in such a good spot to grab this wonder because it's somewhere you definitely want to go anyway in most of your games. When we find our handy kind of friend, the Civlopedia here, the ETEMENANKI is a very simple wonder and works very, very similarly to the Petra. It's a little bit different, but very similarly in terms of how we're going to frame our thoughts on whether we should or should not build this wonder. So the ETEMENANKI, 2 science and 1 production to all marsh tiles in your empire. So let's separate the marsh and the floodplains. Gives you science and production to all marsh tiles in your whole empire, not just the city you build it in, and then +1 production to all floodplain tiles in this city. So really important to keep those kind of separate just while we're thinking about it. It must be built on floodplains or marsh, so you're gonna have to take up one of the tiles that it works on to build it. The same way with the Petra, you have to build that on a desert tile. You have to build this on a floodplains or marsh tile, so no worries there. And then it costs 220 production, and I really want to talk about this 220 number because at least in the early days, this wonder just came out, so my thoughts on it might evolve over time, but at least in the early days, this 220 production cost is really, really important to how I've framed how good I think this wonder is. So obviously, in order to make the ETEMENANKI work, to even think about building it, you are going to need marsh tiles in your empire and floodplain tiles in your city, or some combination of both of those things. The same way when you build the Petra, you need some sort of desert to even think about building it. So I'm going to assume that if you're even thinking about building the ETEMENANKI, you've got a couple of marsh tiles lying around that you don't want to get rid of. You got a couple of floodplain tiles in the city you're going to build it, and those are kind of the reasons you're thinking about building it. But once you decide to build it, especially if you build it right away, this is a very, very, very powerful and effective wonder. First, let's talk about the production here. So when we come up to ETEMENANKI, I will admit we boosted straight here. We came straight here as quickly as we could. We met another civilization for this boost, and we got to ETEMENANKI right away, but we managed to build it by turn 33. So in this game, we managed to build it by turn 33. I think it's fair to say that most games of Civ, for your average person, most games go well beyond turn 253 or somewhere close there. The reason why this is important, is if you even have 1 or 2 marsh tiles, right? Even if you have 1 or 2 marsh tiles in your whole empire, you are pretty much paying back the production cost by just having these marsh tiles. So it's turn 233. We have 2 marsh tiles in our empire. Let's just ignore the floodplains for a minute. We have 2 marsh tiles in our empire, and this game lasts for another 200 turns, right? Well, we've paid back 200 of the 220 production. Remember, this costs 220 production. If we just have these 2 marsh tiles, not these 4, not these ones, not these floodplains, just the 2 marsh tiles, right? And this game goes till turn 233, which is a completely reasonable guess. We've already paid most of the production back. Now, there are some problems with that, right? If you're building the ETEMENANKI, it means you're not building any other wonders that might be more useful. It means you're not building your districts right away. So there still is an opportunity cost there. But the ETEMENANKI is very, very efficient in terms of paying it back with the production, because you don't need a lot of affected tiles to really pay the wonder back, and you get science on top of that. The reason why the science is important is not the amount it gives you. If I use my example of 2 tiles, right, you're only getting 4 science per turn for the rest of the game, right? So 4 times 200, using the same example, is 800 science. 800 science isn't a lot of science overall, but what makes this 4 science right here so effective is that we're getting it at turn 33. If you're playing on Deity, it helps you catch up, but if you're playing on Prince or King, and you really want to start getting your game rolling, what better way to get it rolling than get the ETEMENANKI, get a few production going, or a few science going, sorry. We get our 4 science. Now, all of a sudden, you're just a little bit ahead of the AI to archers. You're just a little bit ahead of the AI to iron. You're just a little bit ahead of them on your way to niter up here. So that 800 isn't going to make a huge difference overall, but in terms of when you start to get that science, that 4 science per turn is a lot in the beginning of the game. Like 4 science per turn right now is giving us like almost half of our science right now, right? So essentially what we've done with the ETEMENANKI is almost doubled our science early on, which really helps us catch up in the game, even if it doesn't mean a whole lot later. Because if it doesn't mean a whole lot later, it doesn't matter that much, because we've already paid back most of the production with the tiles anyway. Now, obviously, when you build the ETEMENANKI, you don't just want to build it for 2 marsh tiles. I'm just using the example that if you can get it at turn 33 with 2 marsh tiles, it's not even that bad, right? Like it actually does quite a bit for you. Ideally, you're building this on a wetlands map. You're building this with 5, 6, 7 marsh tiles in your empire. Now, you have to be a little careful, right? Because you might look around and see lots of marsh, but you have to remember that only starts accumulating when you put the cities down. So if you're not putting a city down here till turn 100, let's say, right, you're losing out on 70 or 67 turns of that production and science. So just be a little careful when you just look and see a whole lot of marsh. It doesn't mean anything unless you're actually getting the marsh, and it only means something once you've got it. But it doesn't take a lot of marsh tiles in your empire to make this a fairly efficient way to get an early wonder for some era score, some production that's mostly going to be enough to pay it back, and some extra science at a really good point in the game. Now, in our city here right now, we also have all these desert floodplains tiles. So in this game specifically, we've been able to combine it with Lady of the Reeds and Marshes to really make these powerful here. But adding production to these floodplain tiles in the capital city has been really, really helpful. So we're going to pay this wonder back very, very quickly. We're getting production on tiles we wouldn't normally get a lot of production on, which is very helpful for us. We're getting a lot of science at a very critical point in the game. At this point in the game, it's almost double our science, which is awesome. And with this ETEMENANKI, we have a lot of room to grow into other marshes nearby, and that's because we're using the wetlands map, and it's not always fair to give the best case scenario for every wonder, but it's very, very helpful to have all these tiles here that we can grow into. So I wanted to zoom ahead in this game here to show you the ideal kind of maximum potential I've been able to find for the ETEMENANKI. So this isn't like an all cases thing, right? But this is kind of what the ETEMENANKI has allowed us to do this game. You guys saw us at turn 33. We are now at turn 142. We are actually playing this game. This is where we're currently at. We are finishing this game tonight on stream, twitch.tv/VanBradley. That link is in the description. If you are watching this on YouTube the day it releases, we are finishing it this evening on Twitch. If you're watching it the day it comes out and you want to see how this game goes, feel free to head over to the Twitch stream and check it out. But having the ETEMENANKI early, giving these floodplains something to do with production. I mean, I'll admit Lady of the Reeds and Marshes has been helpful here too. But the ETEMENANKI early, giving production to all these floodplain tiles, giving production and science to all these marsh tiles in our empire here, has allowed us to build. And I will repeat this, has allowed us to build the pyramids, the Great Bath, the ETEMENANKI where we started, the Temple of Artemis, the Apadana, the Hanging Gardens, the Oracle, we're building the Statue of Zeus in one turn, and the Colosseum. All in one city. Just because of how far ahead we were able to get in science to actually unlock these wonders early. Like I said, the science might not be a lot of science in the grand scheme of things, but when it comes into the game is extraordinarily helpful because it was almost double our science. So we got to unlock a lot of these wonders very, very quickly. Right, and then all the production on these tiles around here allowed us to build them very, very quickly. So this game has just turned into a wonder challenge. We're just trying to build as many wonders as possible, which is why we have a random statue of Zeus going down. We're building Venetian Arsenal down here. We built the Petra in this city up here, New Carlville. But this is just a really good example of how powerful the ETEMENANKI can be when you're using it in its best case scenario and using it effectively, because what it really did for us was allowed us to unlock 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other wonders in the capital without really putting too much effort in on Deity. This is fully on Deity, highest difficulty, all that stuff. No city-state bojangling, like just a small map, right? Like the only thing that we did was make the ETEMENANKI useful with our start, and it unlocked the whole game for us. So in conclusion, the ETEMENANKI is not a wonder you can build every game like the Oracle, and in some games you can really mess it up. If you are going to build the ETEMENANKI, I think the best case scenario is to build it early, as soon as possible, ideally with a couple of marsh tiles that you just immediately get. That way you can almost guarantee the wonder gets paid off over time and that the science is hitting early. If you build the ETEMENANKI at turn like 180 because no one's grabbed it, I highly doubt it's going to be useful. But if you can build it right away with a couple of marsh tiles and a couple of floodplain tiles right around the area where you're grabbing it, that's very, very, very helpful and powerful. And I hope just by showing you this, I know we're getting Lady of the Reeds and Marshes as well. I know this is like the best case scenario, but like the best case scenario is able to show you how powerful this wonder can be if you build it correctly and make the proper use of it, because it completely unlocked this game for us. I don't think I've ever had a capital like this ever playing Civ 6, and it's all because of a good ETEMENANKI that was able to do it. If I had to give you like a recommendation in terms of numbers, I would say some combination of 3 tiles right away. I'd say if you're getting your ETEMENANKI and you have 2 marshes and a floodplain, or 2 floodplains and a marsh, and there's a few more you can grow into, it's probably worth getting, and that's like the worst case scenario that it's worth getting. Ideally, you have a couple of marsh tiles you can get right away, a couple of marsh tiles you can grow into, and the odd floodplain tile in the city you're building it, because the floodplain tiles need to be in the city with the ETEMENANKI. But overall, I don't think it takes a lot for this wonder to be worth it, just based on how early it is. I will warn you to be careful though. If you're playing in the early game on higher difficulties, the AI do like to take this right away, so you can't even get it in every game. Also, there are some games where it won't be an option because of needing archers or any other reason where you might get murdered by the AI. But I think if you open your game, you get into it, you see a couple of marsh tiles, you see a couple of floodplain tiles, this very quickly becomes an awesome wonder for you to build. I think if I had to give it a tier, I'd probably give it a B tier overall. There are some games where it's just terrible and unbuildable, but you can see there are some games where this is like S tier in terms of what it unlocked us and allowed us to do. This is like firmly S tier. So I think if we had to aggregate an average here, this is probably a B tier wonder that if you're building it, if you have the right setup to build it, it is incredible. And I don't think it takes a whole lot, especially on a wetlands map, to have that setup. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. I might even put this save file in the Discord once we're done so other people can play it. I'd love to see how many wonders other people grab on this save. I hope you enjoyed this video, just kind of chatting about one of the new wonders in the game. If you did, feel free to leave a like and subscribe on the video. It helps us out a lot to kind of reach more people. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Have fun building all of your ETEMENANKIs, and we will see you in the next one.